it, attack this lap.
Check flag, check flag.
The race for a greener future has given rise to a new breed of motorsport. Welcome to Extreme E, an all-electric racing series travelling across the globe, not only to raise awareness of the challenges our planet faces, but to promote diversity and inclusion in sport.
From the deserts of Saudi Arabia, our 9 men and 9 women are now on the Atlantic coast of Senegal for the Ocean X Prix. Staged across a 6.1 kilometre course, the teams will fight side by side on the beach to take glory here in Africa.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Senegal in West Africa, the stunning location for the second event on the inaugural Extreme E calendar.
Yes, we are on the Atlantic coast, around 40 kilometres south of Senegal's capital city, Dakar, at the famous Lac Rose. The course the driver will be racing on starts on the beach, heads down through the dunes, through the woods just behind Lac Rose, back into the dunes, more bumps, more jumps. Jenny, really looking forward to this one.
Yes, such a different place to come to than last time out in Saudi Arabia, but beautiful and challenging. And this is going to be a very technical challenge, focusing, of course, on the ocean.
So if you're new to Extreme E, here is all you need to know.
Earth, a planet in perfect balance, providing life across 7 continents, from the biodiverse rainforests to the deepest parts of our oceans. But this existence is at threat. Humans are pumping dangerous levels of carbon into the atmosphere, causing the planet's temperature to rise. In the last decade, we have been witness to the hottest temperatures ever recorded, and huge parts of our ice caps are melting into the ocean, disrupting the ecosystem, threatening our way of life.
The consequences of climate change are affecting millions of people across the planet.
Cities worldwide, everywhere, are going to become uninhabitable.
Our planet is heading towards a climate disaster that threatens all life on Earth as we know it.
We have to act now to make those changes.
Extreme E will bring together the fastest drivers on 4 wheels, in fully electric racing off-road SUVs, to some of the most remote and damaged areas on Earth, raising awareness of the environment, electrification and equality.
I have an impossible dream, to race electric cars in the most remote corners of the planet. I know, without leaving a trace.
The X Prix will be held across 5 countries, each highlighting a major environmental global issue. From the polluted ocean of Senegal, melting ice caps of Greenland, diminishing rainforests of the Amazon, retreating glaciers of Patagonia, to rapidly heating deserts of Saudi Arabia, using the power of sport to highlight the effects human impact is having on our world.
I think it's really important to immerse yourself in those areas and see what's happening with climate change so we can really increase awareness, and from awareness we can have more people taking more actions.
To tackle these demanding locations requires one of the most robust racing cars ever built, the Odyssey 21. This purpose-designed all-electric machine is constructed using cutting-edge environmental technologies and materials. The battery will be charged using a hydrogen fuel cell, producing clean, emission-free energy. Behind the wheel and running the teams of these off-road machines will be some of the biggest names in racing.
The car feels insane.
It's amazing how much torque you have to have immediate power when you touch the throttle pedal.
The drivers, they didn't know what to expect and they were blown away. That's probably the biggest shock, is just how much torque you're able to get.
And marking an historic first for international motorsport, the driver lineup will be equally split, 50% male, 50% female.
The level of competition is going to be insane.
Teams will go wheel to wheel on the most extreme terrains, in the most extreme temperatures, driving the most extreme vehicles.
Extreme E takes racing to uncharted territories by bringing the action to some of the most remote locations, all of which are suffering from the destruction of our environment.
But there is more to this than flat-out racing. A team of industry-leading scientists have joined our race for a greener future to provide unrivaled insights into the regions where we compete. guaranteeing we race without a trace. When the checkered flag falls, our legacy programs will ensure that Extreme E leaves a lasting difference in each and every location.
We want to bring awareness, we want to showcase electric cars, and we want to leave behind a legacy linked to climate change and to pollution.
Wouldn't it be great to be a part of something that really does make a difference?
This is fierce and exciting racing with the future of our planet at its heart. This is the greatest adventure of our time. This is Extreme E.
Well, you saw some fantastic pictures there from our first round at Al Ula in Saudi Arabia. We move on now to Lac Rose in Senegal, down the coast here of the Atlantic Ocean, literally. This is beach straight, which takes the drivers from the start line, turn one almost immediately after that start line. Then this enormous run down, Jenny, to the cut, which is where they head in. And this course is so much more technical than Saudi was. All that course is going to be different. This one's really tight and twisty.
Yeah, it's a real contrast to last time out. As you can see, lots of smaller undulations where you're going to have to understand how your car works, the suspension, and it's a real rough ride at points as you go inland and towards what is going to be one of the really extreme sections, which is the mogul run, just hugging along the tree line there, Andrew.
Yeah, stay with us for the mogul run. You'll see some of the drivers today have had an interesting time, let's say, heading through that section. The woods as well. If you took a look yesterday at the preview map, which appeared on YouTube, an onboard of the entire course, you can go and seek that out if you head to Extreme E's social media channels. It was a whole lap on board. That section, Jenny, so narrow, it's going to cut up, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the back straight then, as mirrors along the beach, but instead of being flat and quite easy to drive, you'd say this one a lot more challenging. Up, down, left, right, picking your line, making sure that is the way you want to tackle this course.
It's properly three-dimensional, this place. It really is. You can risk it and you can make up some time, and the speed is not as high as we saw in Saudi, but I think we are going to see the potential for people rolling cars if they're not careful. So when do you risk it? How much for? How much time can you make up? Yeah, do you risk it in qualifying, or do you leave that until later on in the weekend? So you know where we are, you know what Extreme E is. This is how it works.
So you have seen what everything is going to be the course so far, but there's an important message when it comes to Extreme E as well. And that's one of the main reasons we come here. It's not just about the sport, it's about the message, it's about the legacy that we leave as well. As you can see, beautiful beach, but it has some issues as well. It has plastic littering the dunes and compromising the wildlife. So this is more of the reason why we've come here to Senegal. The world's finest drivers have joined brand new teams to compete in the Extreme E Championship. Each team will consist of one female and one male driver. The drivers will compete in Prix across the globe, each highlighting a specific environmental issue. The male and female driver must compete one lap each in any order and can choose at the last moment who starts. Each team has 2 hyperdrive power boosts they can activate on lap 1 and lap 2 of the race. Over the course of an Prix, the team who goes quickest through the super sector collects a further 5 team championship points. Day 1 is qualifying. Qualifying round 1 sees all teams set times. Each car will do 2 laps, 1 from each of their drivers. In qualifying round 2, all the teams head out on the course again. The times from both sessions are then added together to make up the qualifying order and grab the first championship points of the weekend. The top 3 go to semi-final 1, 4th, 5th and 6th go to the second semi-final, with the bottom 3 heading to the shootout race to fight it out for precious championship points. Day 2 starts with the semi-finals, with the top 2 teams from each semi progressing to the final. The bottom 3 teams from Day 1's qualifying go head-to-head in the shootout race to decide who finishes 7th, 8th and 9th overall. Grid play allows fans to vote for their favourite team and drivers. The team that collects the most votes get first grid position pick for the final, with the second and third teams choosing in order after. But there is a twist. The teams who do not reach the final can still have an impact, as they can donate their votes to any team that reaches the final and influence who eventually wins the all-important grid play. In the final, the team that crosses the line first wins the Prix and claims 25 championship points, with the following teams collecting further championship points in descending order. All 5 Prix count towards the team's championship, and in the Drivers' Championship, competitors can drop their worst Prix result of the season. Who has what it takes to lift the trophy?
Well, today saw the first free practice session for all the teams heading out onto this brand new course. They'd had a shakedown in the morning, one driver, only 100 kilowatts. So that was a slow exercise, and that was really for some of the teams who'd had issues in Saudi Arabia. Jenny, we had 3 cars that practically had to be fully rebuilt after the boat arrived here in Dakar.
Yeah, it's one of the fascinating points of this championship. You can see here Oliver Bennett in that Excite Energy racing car, and that was one of the ones that had to have a little work done on it, but they couldn't start until they arrived here in Senegal, going through the wood section, tight, twisty, challenging.
They were first out on course, so this was a full power run, so not limited in terms of the output on the cars. Both drivers to take a lap each with a driver switch as well. So different than we saw in Saudi, where the drivers did their free practice runs separately. This was much more like a qualifying run. And Jenny, I think for the teams, a much better representation of what they're going to face tomorrow when we head into Q1 and Q2.
Absolutely, you can hear there Christine GZ in the car, just doing that switch, just trying to get her seatbelts in. So many different parts of this whole race weekend to take into mind as a driver, to make sure you understand not only what you're doing out on course, but also when it comes to the switch, when it comes to starts, when it comes to finishing. All of these things have to come together to make a perfect race weekend.
So these guys were first out on course. They go in 3 sessions, 3 cars in each of the sessions, and I think it's fair to say that they were a little bit cautious on their run, Jenny. So we saw some of the other cars, well, you'll see in a moment, really pushing very hard indeed, but that's with the ability to sit in the paddock and watch the footage of where people were taking risks and where they weren't. Now this weekend, big news, Jenson Button is not in the car for JBXE. He's replaced himself, as he's the team principal, with Kevin Hansen. Kevin is a European Rallycross champion. He's Timmy Hansen's brother, son of the legendary Kenneth Hansen, 14 times a European Rallycross champion. So he's probably got more off-road, well, he's definitely got more off-road experience than Jenson, but of course not so much experience of the XE machine.
Yeah, birthday boy as well, 23 today, so congratulations to him. He handed over to Michaela Arlen-Kotelinski, and the switch took place relatively easily. And then, as you can see, a beautiful shot there demonstrating exactly what it's like to drive along the beach and the Atlantic Ocean.
See there, the rear of the car kicking up fairly high. This is really indicative of what this track is like. It really is 3-dimensional. Saudi, you saw, was very, very high speed. I think high on bravery and high on commitment. And as a result of that, we had a couple of really very big crashes. There is still the potential here, as you see, the beach straight, which has got to be the best straight ever in motorsport. But there is still the potential here to make mistakes with the ups and downs, but also to make up time if you're willing to take those risks.
This, our third team out, Lewis Hamilton's team, with Sebastian Loeb and Cristina Gutierrez. And it was Sebastian Loeb who took the wheel first, and he wanted to give a demonstration, I think, going out there and picking his lines, choosing what he wanted to do, using this as a tester really for the rest of the weekend. But also, as you can see there, just down in the bottom right where the timing sector is a purpley pink, a nice colour down there, it shows they were in the #1 position, going just over 8 seconds faster than anybody else at this point.
Yeah, very much a recce run for all the teams this morning. Me and Jenny were lucky enough to see the entire runs, and Loeb was super committed. Gutierrez as well. This was one of the areas where some of the drivers were trying alternate lines, using the undergrowth down the side of the track to see if they could maybe find a little bit more traction. How hard can you go over some of those crests? The alternate lines left and right, is it quicker? It's been an interesting day, Jenny. Also some practice starts, meaning that although we had timing running during the session, some of the times don't quite indicate, do they? And we wonder also potentially a little bit of sandbagging from some of the teams.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. So both drivers will have to take 2 starts across the weekend. They'll alternate, which gives us a different dimension. So some of the drivers who didn't do a start last time out, for example, in Saudi Arabia, using this weekend and this session to practice that. This, the car of Acciona with Carlos Sainz and Laia Sanz, and they had a really good session, even if they did have a little bit of loose bodywork around the rear of the car. But apparently they had a little bit of an issue, and Carlos Sainz got his throttle stuck open. I've just spoken to one of the team principals down there, and I tell you what, this isn't a place where you want to have your throttle stuck open, because you want to be in control of your pace at all times.
I don't think there's anywhere in motorsport really where you want your throttle stuck open, is there? You know, unless you haven't taken your brave pills, then
drag
maybe.
Racing, that.
Maybe. But yes, Sainz and Sanz with a slight issue for Carlos. They came in P5 in the session. You'll be able to see during the course of Q1 and Q2 tomorrow. Now we get updated times at every single pair of flags that the drivers head through. So the waypoints that each driver heads through, using GPS, the car's times are updated immediately, so we can see the gaps, you can see whether or not they're gaining or losing time. So at the bottom of your screen, when you see the timing sections, if it's green, it means they're gaining time. If it's grey, it means they're not. If it's pink, it means they're on for P1 overall. And remember, Q1 and Q2 will be the aggregate time of both of those sessions, with both drivers driving the car, which decides which of the semi-finals they're going to. And you want to be in semi-1 or semi-2, you don't want to be in the shootout.
Yeah, you certainly don't, because that leaves you no option to get into the final. If you're first and second in either of those semi-finals, semi-final 1 or 2, you will get yourself a place in the final. This time, final made up of 4 cars, and that's why looking at this, which is the Andretti United car, is fascinating, because you can really imagine what it's going to be like with all 4 cars out there fighting to be the winner of the Prix.
We saw an interesting line from Timmy Hansen on the beach. He dropped down onto the wet sand, the super smooth, super fast sand, before popping the car back up. Looking at the sector times, it didn't look like it made that much difference to the lap. Interestingly, Johan Kristoffersen later took the same lap. They're running pink on the race suits and pink on the cars. It's a different flavour of a drink that sponsors the team, but it's about Lac Rose, so nice little nod there to the local region.
Certainly is. Katie Munnings behind the wheel. They had a power steering issue in the first part of qualifying last time out in Saudi Arabia. No such issues for the teams this time out. Looked very comfortable in there, setting a really nice time. Katie doing a lot of work in between the 2 races to try and make sure she's absolutely in the zone, improving herself all the time. And look there, you can see down at the timings, they move themselves up. They go into, I suppose, pole position at the moment, setting the fastest time, almost 3 seconds faster than anybody else. And Munnings there really hard on the brakes.
Yeah, that was Munnings then testing the braking zone for the switch zone. So interesting that she chose to do that rather than set a quick time. And again, we saw a number of drivers do that. So you really will need to tune into Q1 tomorrow if you want to see who has the ultimate pace. Interestingly, Johan Kristoffersen and Molly Taylor didn't have the ultimate pace in this session, but they weren't far off it. Jenny, we spoke at length today about managing risk, because these guys absolutely risked it. Both Molly and Johan were in full send mode in Saudi Arabia in that first practice session. When we saw how it played out, one little issue there for Kristoffersen running wide. You know, we saw the roll for Veloce, we saw the roll for Abt Cupra. It maybe wasn't the best tactic, and they've definitely taken a slightly more measured approach here.
Yeah, these are our championship leaders, worth bearing in mind. They have 35 points at the top of the tables over Lewis Hamilton's X44 team, who have 30 points, and then Andretti United on 28. So a lot to play for, and this is a weekend where you gain information every time you go out on the course.
There's one of those drops which we've seen. You can commit super late on the brakes and drop the nose over it. Nobody's really flying it. It's these kickers which have been causing the issue. So the rear end of the car gets fired up high in the air. We saw particularly for Katie Munnings and also for Matthias Ekström on a big push. That can make it can be a big risk. Is it a big reward? And Carl Leduc, who went second, Sarah Price, went first for Chip Ganassi Racing, you can see on board here. Carl Leduc on the second lap for these guys, Jenny. We've been looking at the split times, and he was outrageously quick. More fastest sectors than anybody else.
I mean, Sarah was impressive as it was. This is the switch over. You can see Carl getting in. Sarah doing a really nice job of herself. But then Carl gets in and clearly frustrated from last time out, disappointed in himself and a point to prove, and he goes out there and you can just see he's ragging it because the back's kicking up, the front's kicking up, he's taking all sorts of lines, but he doesn't care. This is a man who's used to truck racing. He's gone out there and absolutely given it 110%. Is that a thing?
Look at it. Full send over the crest there. You can see on board with him. Last time out, super committed. Had a crash in Shakedown, which didn't go very well. And then, of course, had contact with Claudia Herken in the shootout race. It just didn't go their way. But Sarah and Kyle cannot be counted out. They're both off-road racing veterans. They've both won multiple championships. Of all the teams that didn't perform well last time out, they are the ones who I think can challenge at the very top of the leaderboard.
I don't know,
and
because don't discount these two, because I think Veloce, Jamie Chadwick didn't even get a proper run in. So she's gaining experience as she goes through this weekend. But Chadwick and Sarazan in the Veloce team, they scored 4 points last time out because they didn't even complete qualifying at the end of it. So a lot to prove for them, a lot to learn. But equally, don't discount these two. Jamie Chadwick, W Series champion of 2019. Stefan Sarazan, one of the most experienced all-rounders when it comes to motorsport. They have a lot to offer.
They do indeed. I mean, Sarazan coming from that background of both WEC and F1, the highest level of circuit racing, but for me, it's the rally background which has made such a big difference. And Chadwick, Jenny, very much here to learn. You said that she's a real sponge in terms of taking on the information. And although this is completely different to the day job, if you want to call it that, it will be valuable experience.
I did speak to someone the other day and they said this is definitely not a road races championship, but actually that's where the road racers have got to prove everybody wrong. They've got to bring something to it, and when it comes to 4 cars on Sunday when they're racing, that experience of a start line tussle of trying to fight for a position is going to be really crucial.
If you look down the list of drivers, it's the drivers who have racing experience. So we've had a change in the regulations this weekend, which means that no one driver will be able to take the start in every session. So you can expect to see both the men and the women taking the starts. And it's going to be very interesting indeed to see how that plays out tactically. Well, one of the key principles of Extreme, of course, is to highlight the impact of climate change on the planet. Here in Senegal, it's about global warming and rising sea levels. To explain more, here is Extreme Science Committee's Dr. Lucy Woodall.
The ocean is vitally important for us as humans and, in fact, the planet as a whole. So the increase of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and the increase of temperature and climate change has multiple different consequences in the ocean. So we have sea level rise, which means our coastal areas are being flooded by salty water. We have additional storms and increased intensity of those storms. But we also have a really direct impact. Poorly managed fisheries has really dramatic impacts on the ocean. Each of those having their unique consequences on the life in and around the ocean. If things continue as they are, by the start of the next century, sea level will have risen over 1 metre. Sea level rise comes from 2 parts: the melting of the ice and the thermal expansion of the ocean water. So as air temperature rises, so does the ocean, and as the water warms, it expands, and this creates an additional sea level rise. With just a 3 degrees temperature rise, by 2100, the Greenland ice sheet will have melted, and that will contribute about 9 centimetres to sea level. The additional melt from glaciers will contribute about 19 centimetres to sea level, but thermal expansion will contribute an additional 40 centimetres. The additional sea level rise is going to cause massive consequences to communities across the planet. So we would expect flooding and even whole communities and towns to disappear. If we can keep temperature rise to about 1.5 degrees, then we can limit the sea level rise to about 1/3 of the current predictions. This is going to have a massive impact, and although it's going to be difficult, but will be managed much more effectively than if we do nothing. So now we need to listen to the ocean and communities that rely on it and be able to put our ingenuity into making sure that we can come up with solutions that work for us now, but critically for our future generations.
Such an important message, and you can see there the drivers who have been away. They've been doing the legacy program, planting mangroves and little trees. They're very keen to win this championship, but they're very keen to spread the message behind it.
Yeah, very much. They're all on board. But at the end of the day, tomorrow when the green light comes, the message is going to be very different. It's going to be, how can I beat everybody else who's here? And Jenny, I'm really looking forward to it. Q1 and Q2 tomorrow, 2 sessions which will decide who goes into what semi-finals, who ends up in the shootout. Look at these pictures. You can just see how tricky this track is going to be. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Make sure you join us to see which of these 9 cars will be superior, who can go best, who can go fastest, and who can keep their car on 4 wheels and survive here in Senegal.